The Pokemon fandom is comprised of a lot of different sub-communities, each of which cater to a very specific type of interest. One such instance of these is the fan game community, those who make their own custom Pokemon games by either modifying the existing ROMs of Pokemon games or by creating their own game from scratch or using some type of toolkit. And this leads to a lot of interesting and unique ideas. And of that, we get a few that are a bit more spooky, let's say. The example I want to look at today is Pokemon Mansion Mystery. This is a hack of Pokemon Fire Red that was released quite naturally in October of 2018 on Whack-A-Hack, a Spanish language Pokemon forum, which creates a bit of a problem for this particular video. I don't speak Spanish. Thankfully, there is an English version that was created, but for whatever reason, I was unable to track down a download for it. I can't say for certain, but I feel like it might have something to do with Nintendo targeting all sorts of ROM downloads. I think that's probably the reason. So, is there a plan B here? So it turns out the guy that made that hack, Nachoius, made a follow-up game a few years later, Pokemon Mansion Mystery 2. This one, I was actually able to track down the English version of it. So, we're gonna play that instead. Credit to A-Start Gaming for doing this particular translation. Unlike its predecessor, this game is not a ROM hack. Instead, it uses the Pokemon Essentials Kit, which, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a kit that allows you to create your own Pokemon game using RPG Maker XP. This approach gives developers a lot more freedom to do what they want with their game, instead of having to follow the constraints of the ROM that they are hacking, which, in the case of ROM hacks, is usually one of the Gen 3 games. That isn't to say that there are no limitations as to what you can do with this kit. There are quite a bit, largely stemming from its engine of choice, that being RPG Maker. The big one is that of platform. Part of the issue with some of the older RPG Maker versions is that they relied on toolkits that could only allow the game to run on a Windows platform, meaning that Mac, Linux, and mobile platforms had no way of running these games. Now, granted, Windows is the majority of PC users, but a lot of people now play games on their phones, and at least for Android users, emulators are part of that. There are also some issues with resolution when using this kit. The maximum resolution when using RPG Maker XP is 640 by 480, which in the day of now 4K gaming is pretty small. You also can't really full screen property due to Essentials, further reducing the screen down to fit the GBA sized assets. Despite all of those limitations, it is still the most robust tool to make a Pokemon game with. Unfortunately, this tool was DMCA'd by Nintendo a couple of years ago, which led to the core development team ceasing all progress on the kit and taking down the download links of it. So this is Retro from the future. I have since learned, since recording this video, that Pokemon Essentials was actually brought back around 2020. I don't know the details as to how it came back. I sort of just assumed that after the 2018 takedown, they were done and the only way to get it was through unofficial links, but it seems like development on Essentials has completely resumed, and yeah, it's back and completely usable, which I am completely shocked by, but I just need to make sure I set the record straight here. Now, on to the game that we are actually talking about. Let's sort of discuss it a bit. From what I can tell, both games have a roughly similar structure. For this game in particular, while you do name your protagonist, it's very clear that you are playing as the gym leader Morty from Gen 2, hence my outfit for this video. Instead of picking your starter from the professor and then going out into the world and battling gyms, you start this game with a Litwick and explore a mansion solving different puzzles. While there is some variety, many of them behave the same. You get an item called the Ghost Finder, which is basically just the item finder but renamed, and use that to find ghost Pokemon hidden throughout the various rooms. And once you encounter all the ghost Pokemon in a specific room, it causes a key to spawn, which then allows you to go and find the next room in the sequence. However, the game doesn't do a whole lot to direct you to the next room. It's a bit of a wild goose chase to actually find where you're supposed to go after you clear each one, which for the sake of this particular game isn't a huge deal, but it is a game design flaw nonetheless. Since this game is set in a mansion, the player is a bit limited in terms of their items. Items cannot be bought in this game, they can only be found, which extends to Pokeballs, meaning that you have only so many opportunities to catch a Pokemon, which forces you to pick and choose which Pokemon you want to add to your team. Now, they're pretty much all ghost Pokemon, so you're not going to run into too much of an issue there, but it's going to be more of a case of what Pokemons are strongest and most helpful for you on your journey. This does also mean the RNG can screw you over if it so chooses, leaving you without the ability to really catch any more powerful Pokemon, which can create a huge problem because this game seems to largely favor replacing your current Pokemon with the new one instead of raising the entire team up to be the same level. And while battling is a pretty significant focus of this game, that's not the only system that's in place here. There are some features in this game that, while not maybe impossible, are quite difficult to achieve in a ROM hack. One of these is the energy system, which determines the size of your lantern's radius, and thus your visible view in the game. This reduces whenever you run into wild Pokemon, as well as a few other things. This mechanic can be kind of annoying because the wild Pokemon don't freeze when you interact with stuff, and sometimes they tend to follow you. So they'll walk into you and then you'll lose energy once you regain control. And while this is a fairly interesting system, it doesn't really add too much in terms of difficulty because it's really easy to reset your energy back to the maximum because all you have to do is talk to one of these candles scattered throughout the mansion. And they are literally everywhere. So it's not a huge deal if you get hit, honestly. The other major mechanic here is the sanity mechanic, which is just sort of a thing that a lot of horror games have. Here again, it doesn't seem to do all that much. When your sanity reaches 0, the game just sort of treats it as a party wipe and then refills you back to full. There are a few item interactions that require you to have a certain amount of sanity, usually a low amount of sanity, but beyond that, there isn't really much use for the mechanic other than, again, it's a thing that horror games do, so we have to do it here, obviously. In terms of story, there's not much. You go to this mansion, and then you basically go around until you find this Gengar and defeat it, and that's basically it. There's some journal entries which I presume provided some backstory, but even in the English version, they're still being presented in Spanish. So unfortunately, I can't really say what they took away or added to the experience in any real capacity. Another thing I kind of want to praise this game for is how it goes through and replaces all of the Pokemon's chiptune cries with their voices from the Pokemon anime, which is something that can't really be done in a ROM hack due to the GBA's limited sound card. And honestly, I thought early on it would get annoying as the game wore on, but it really didn't. And part of that's really because this game isn't all that long. It takes only about maybe an hour and a half to complete in full. So it's a bit of a fun little game if you want to have, you know, just maybe a little bit of spooky fun for the holiday season. Overall, it's a fairly charming little game, but I don't think I could sell myself on playing a game that was longer than a few hours with this particular format. Maybe for one dungeon in a larger Pokemon game, but definitely not the entire game. But anyways, that is all I have for today. I thought this would be just sort of an interesting video to do for the season, because, you know, I like Halloween and dressing up, so I felt like this is fitting. I need to do this. Anyways, if you like this video, make sure you go ahead and give it a thumbs up, as well as subscribing if you want to see more content like this in the future. I might do some other seasonal videos for other holidays going forward. I've already got a few ideas for Christmas going on. Also, if you would like to support this channel financially for whatever reason, the link to my Patreon is in the description of this video. But anyways, until the next video, I will see you guys, and happy Halloween.